had been reeling under some very unfortunate circumstances. Childhood vaccines have run out, and indeed, that poses a lot of danger for our kids in the immediate future. Why should the state sit for vaccines for children to run out? Vaccines used for routine immunization of children from birth to about 18 months. Is it a case that our priorities are not in the right places? Run out. What is the point? Or why should we sit as a people for it to run out without any solution? Members of Parliament, once again, have been there. They did not see it. It was when the graphic reported it that they quickly hauled, or they quickly sent a letter to the Minister for Finance to appear before them. Is that how we should be running the state? Who is keeping a tab on some of these important things? Mind you, we have money in the National Cathedral, like wanting to and reverting conversation. It's called The Big Issue on 97.3 Citi FM. Once again, my name is Selorm Adonoo. I'll return after this short break, introduce my guests, provide some updates, and then we'll get into the discussion. Once again, you're welcome. Yeah, welcome back to The Big Issue. The show is your show. It is live and interactive. You can join the discussion via WhatsApp number 020-444-7033. So this year marks 30 years of the inception of the Fourth Republic, which saw of military rule. On the 7th of January 1993, the first Parliament of the Fourth Republic was instituted. The first parliament with 200 seats, which was seen to be one-sided due to the boycott by the MPP, has since gone through different phases. The eighth parliament, which is currently in session, has 275 seats, with no clear majority for the two main political parties, the NDC and MPP, for the very first time. Also unprecedented is having an opposition speaker. But after 30 years of witnessing different forms of parliamentary democracy, can we confidently say that the legislature has served us well? What has been the impact of the development? What kind of reforms are needed to make Parliament function to the best? These and many more questions and matters will come up in today's discussion. But before then, we bring you excerpts of one of the functions of Parliament, that is controlling or keeping an oversight on the executive. In this case, the vetting of minister nominees, which took place this week, where some nominated persons were nominated to fill certain vacant ministerial positions. They faced the Appointments Committee earlier in the week, and some of the nominees include Katie Hammond and then Brian Champon. Let's look at what transpired on the floor, or in the committee, the Appointments Committee's hearing.
The Appointments Committee of Parliament commenced the vetting of ministers appointed by President Akufo-Addo on Monday. Prior to the exercise, the minority group in Parliament addressed the media, announcing plans not to subscribe to a consensus approval of the nominees following a directive from the National Democratic Congress, NDC.
We are taking part in the vetting processes so that at the very minimum, we can scrutinize the President's decision in bringing up these nominees. Again, the minority will not subscribe to a consensus vote at the level of the Appointment Committee. This will ensure that the matter is brought to the full House for this expedition. We are calling on the following. 1, immediate reduction in the numbers of ministers from the current level of 86 to 65. 2, the merger of the following ministries. For example, 1, information and communications to be merged. 2, transport and railways to be merged. Chieftaincy and tourism. 3. 4, sanitation and local government, among others. And then agric and fisheries, if possible. The immediate reduction in the number of political appointees at the office of the president, we also expect that to be done.
But the majority in Parliament described the move as politically immature.
I don't know why they've come to sit here. When you have a prejudiced mind, what are you coming to do? To ask questions to embarrass them, then go ahead and say that we have failed you. Is that what they are here to do? Well, I'm disappointed in the NDC, and if they really want to portray themselves as a party ready to take the reins of government, then they should behave well. What they are doing is way below belt and maturity in their conduct. Now I ask, is Atu Forsen and his team merely toothless? So they will sit in Parliament and they will receive direct orders from Mr. Fifi Kwete.
At the beginning of the vetting, the minority members on the appointment committee expressed their displeasure with the Minister-designate for Trade and Industry, Katie Hammond, over what they described as constant interjections.
The assumption is that if you are as intelligent as you claim, you will be conversant.
Mr. Chairman, can you have a discussion with your colleague? That is unparliamentary.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the nominee must realize that he is before a serious committee. You can do whatever you do with us outside the sitting of the committee. When you come before the committee and you're on national television and everybody is viewing, you must take us serious. I'm asking a question. Let me finish asking the question. And if you have an answer, you can give your answer. If you tell the whole country that you've not been paying attention to the papers that have been given to you, it's up to you.
Mr. Chairman,
we are working on your nomination, and you are interjecting and
Honorable member, it's me. I'm supposed to regulate the meeting. So if I'm failing, I'll take responsibility. Please proceed with your question.
At the time, I'm of the view that the nominee is very affable, and we all know. But when you are about to take, at least as the president wished, a position as a trade minister, you need to put up a posture that is more serious than being friendly to us.
Katie Hammond, at his vetting, denied any wrongdoing in the oil drill ship saga.
I've said I was 3 months in place as a deputy minister. You can well imagine that a matter of this magnitude would not be taken at my level. Every twist and turn, I called back home. Every twist and turn, I was given my executive instruments, quote unquote. That is the documentation. Some of them signed by the then Attorney General, some of them signed by the then Chief Executive of GMPC.
Now,
so, did you appear before the Apple Committee?
yes, were you at the time accused of anything? What were you accused of?
Listen, Mr. Chairman, the report makes sure it is what I've passed on to. That's why I was getting pretty upset, but I had to take back the word that I used. Nothing of what that my colleague Sohini read is in that report. The report on the facts, straightforward. What I've told you, the basis, and the fact that it says I was at the thick of affairs.
During the vetting of the Minister-designate for Food and Agriculture, Brian Champon, the ranking member on the Food and Agriculture Committee of Parliament, Eric Opoku, revealed that the National Food Buffer Stock had been starved of funds since the year 2012, thereby hindering the delivery of its mandate.
As we speak, since 2012, that an amount of 15 million Ghana cedis was advanced to the National Buffer Stock to support their operations. Not a peso has been made available to them to enable them play this critical role in our system. So Ghana, as we said, we do not have a cup of grains stored anywhere against emergencies. Honorable Minister, what do you think must be done immediately to assure Ghanaians that should, in case of any emergency, the Ghana buffer stock will be ready to sustain us for at least some days to enable us find something else to do. I was surprised myself when I found out that buffer stock is struggling, to the extent that they had the opportunity to feed the free SHS program. They have supplied quite a lot, but they are not getting payments on time. So beyond their initial seed capital, they are struggling in other areas. This is something that I will push to reverse immediately, that I get in. I know that these are hard times, but I will advocate strongly that as part of our national security, we need to ensure that buffer stock is positioned to deliver us when we get there.
The nominee also denied authorizing an operation by some security personnel in the Ayawaso West Wogon by-election in 2019.
I don't recommend my prosecution because there was no facts to support that. But they place an individual liability on me. And the individual liability is born out of the fact that, Mr. Chairman, and I read, the Commission recommends that Mr. Brian Champon be reprimanded for his ultimate responsibility as minister in authorizing an operation of that character on a day of an election in a built-up area. Mr. Chairman, even in the unlikely event that I was a minister of state and authorized that operation, what I am being asked to be reprimanded for is not a crime.
Honorable, my interest is not the speculation. Did you authorize that operation?
Mr. Chairman, I did not authorize that operation, and that is why it was easy for the white paper to say that they reject the recommendation because it is without basis. But I must add that the Ayawaso incident is a blot on our democracy.
All right, so you saw excerpts of what happened in Parliament earlier this week. You started with Dr. Atufosi, Minority Leader, and his colleagues addressing the press on what actually they were intending to do. We saw steps of the vetting itself, Katie Hammer responding to the thorny matter of the drill ship and how he was answering their questions and all of that. And then Brian Champon, a Greek minister designate, responding to some issues about shortage of food. And also, he used to be the Minister of State at the National Security Ministry, and he was in the thick of affairs, as the report said, in the matter of the Ayawaso West Wogon by-election violence. He was answering questions on all of that. So that is some updates we've brought to you. I want to kickstart a discussion. To help us do the discussion on the first part is Mahama Yariga, who is MP for Boku Central, Dr. Rashid Draman, Executive Director, Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, ASEPA, Paul Abrampa Mensa, who is a Senior Programs Officer with the CDD, the Honorable Alex Ander Aban, who is a former Member of Parliament for Gomoa West, and also Franklin Kujo, President of Imani Africa. Gentlemen, you are welcome to the program. I start with Dr. Rashid Draman, the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, because he's done quite a bit in that arena, and he is an affairs and matters relating to strengthening Parliament and all of that. Doc, you're welcome to the program. So,
thank you very much.
Very well. We're looking at our Parliament 30 years on and trying to understand how Parliament has done in respect of the performance of its role. What would be your first comment on this fourth Republican Parliament we've had, the transitions or the evolution of that Parliament from 1993, where we had a one-sided House, to now, incidentally, that we have what we call a hung Parliament? What would be your initial comments on how Parliament has worked all this while till now?
Thank you very much, Selorm. I think my initial comment, first of all, is that if for nothing at all, at least Parliament has helped to create some stability in our democratic dispensation. At the very least, we now have a forum where, issues that concern our nation are deliberated upon, discussed, and then sometimes they agree, other times they disagree. Rather than a situation where in our history before the Fourth Republic, as you indicated, we've had our democracies being truncated at different times because I think there was the feeling that issues cannot be resolved sitting down and deliberating and agreeing to disagree. Now, in terms of the performance of parliaments over the years, from the first to the current one that we have, I think my major concern, and in fact this is backed by data and a number of studies, is that when it comes to the most important function of Parliament, which is holding the executive to account and performing its power of the purse function, our Parliament has not fared quite well. Whether it's the first Parliament or it's the 8th Parliament. In fact, in this 8th Parliament, there were many who had very, very high hopes that given its different composition from all the other parliaments before it, we were going to see a parliament that was quite active, particularly when it comes to holding the government to account. The verdict is not complete yet. They still have at least a year and a half to go. But if we do an assessment up to this point, I don't think very much has changed of the purse and holding the government to account when it comes to particularly issues of the budget, issues of finance, and so on. There are many others, and on the basis of that, I have an 11-point agenda of reform that I think I'm going to share. And if the leaders of our parliament are minded, at least when those reforms are implemented, hopefully in the next 30 years, if we are all alive and we look back, we might see perhaps a parliament that is different from what we have seen in the 8 parliaments that we've witnessed up to this point.
I see.
So I don't know whether you allow me.
So Paul Abraham-Mensa, CDD has done quite some work on MPs and how they have fared. 30 years on, what would be your verdict of how our members of parliament and by extension the institution of parliament has fared?
Yes, good morning, and let me take this opportunity to say very good morning to co-panelists and our listeners, and Honorable who is with us here. As we did say in a Goodwood message on the launch of the 30 years of Parliament, I think a lot has been achieved. Not for anything at all, as my senior colleague said, providing the platform for deliberation, for discussion on important issue of national issues itself is better. CDD did a bit of work on the 3 arms of government, and we realized that Parliament is the most representative, the most accessible arm of government among the 3. That itself is a plus to democracy when you have the House, an arm of government that provides platform of hearing to the people they represent, that provide a platform of discussing issues before their deliberation at the House. That's the basis of democracy. But as said, the expectations, the aspirations of many Ghanaians when we re-enter into Fourth Republic after our turbulent times previously were that there was going to be much critical improvement in the work of our legislature, because it's the eye of Ghanaians. Legislature is the mouthpiece, the eye, and everything of what the other arms of government do. So if people feel that they are not getting the justice they deserve, the complaint channel, the person who intervenes or the house that intervenes is the House. If people think that our resources are not being managed well or for the benefit of the people, our mouthpiece, our eye is the legislature. So that bit was expected of honorable members and the parliaments. But as Dr. Rashid said, we practice a system where more and more you seek to see a bit of more influence from political structure on the members of the House. And there are bits of issues out there. I, for instance, was involved in a project to try to bridge consensus during the 2019 referendum, trying to get honorable members to be on the one side to support, at least even if not for the second question on whether MMDC should be elected on partisan or not. But the first question that Afrobarometer just said that 75-76% of Ghanaians who want to elect their MMDCs, at least to look at that. You have a meeting with honorable members, try to build consensus, then later you hear a party issues a statement, and it rubbishes everything, this thing we have with our honorable members. So the influence, later the grand reshuffle at Parliament, leadership of NDC at Parliament, that some honorable members were even saying they were not consulted, whether they were consulted. But some of these things teach to tell you that the influence of party headquarters on the work of Parliament is and by extension, the executives is becoming far too much, and that hinders the effectiveness and efficiency of the expectations of Ghanaians.
But should that really be a very big problem as we want it to, as we are making it sound? For example, they come to Parliament on the ticket of the party. They do not come as independent candidates. So if you have an independent mind, maybe you want to mobilize your own resources, marshal the numbers, win.
That is the challenge.
And come to Parliament.
That is the challenge.
So if you come on my ticket, there are basic things. I mean, there's a reason why NDC is different from MPP and CPP and PNC. There are
by representative of the people. Let's get that clear. You come on the ticket of NDC, but you are my MP, as I pray, in Carrier constituency or in Obeja constituency. You balancing the influence of your party and my wish. I just said that Parliament is congratulated because a platform and the voice of the people. So that must be the precedent. That must be the most important consideration ahead of any consideration as far as national issues are concerned. Anyway, as to say, so that's a bit of it. But all in all, I think if you ask me to compare the four parliaments, the First Republic, second up to the Fourth Republic, I will say I'll give a plus to the current parliaments for the openness. That civil society organization of agreeing to disagree, and that's the bits of price for democracy. So I'll say we have a structure, we have the men, we need to do a bit more to have the actual independence of our members to represent the people who voted them to power. So for now, I'll say, comparing the four parliaments, I'll give a plus to this current parliament.
I see. Franklin, where do you stand? The functions of Parliament, their representational duty or responsibility or function, their control, the function to control the public purse and all of that. How will you score, this Parliament vis-a-vis the previous ones we have seen? This Parliament meaning the Fourth Republican Parliament, and maybe specifically this eighth one, and the previous ones we've seen in the First, Second, and Third Republics.
Well, good morning, my good friends. Look, I think Parliament largely has done its primary duty of representing everybody, representing the people. But of course, we can quibble over the quality of the representation. When it comes to the question you asked as to whether they've been able to exercise their mandates in a way that would have been absorb, if you like, from executive influence. Unfortunately, especially when from executive influence, unfortunately, that jury is still out there. I mean, to the extent that we have members of parliament who would have to be looking up to the executive for positions in office, it sort of becomes a bit difficult for a ruling. I mean, members of parliament of a ruling party to exert the kinds of accountability that we all require. And that's a big conversation I think we need to have. And I don't know whether it's part of a constitutional amendment that we want. Otherwise, I must also confess that Parliament, apart from the plenary conversations and sometimes the rather disappointing, what's the point? What's it called? I mean, when they are interviewing prospective members of Parliament, members of Parliament, when
the vetting,
people
are being, is it a vetting?
Yes, the vetting.
The vetting,
sorry,
yes.
Yeah. Apart from that, I think there's just a lot of jam within the committees. I mean, you'll be surprised to learn that people have skill sets that ordinarily you wouldn't hear them propound, maybe because they are not given the due in the media. But a few times that we have engaged with committees, like the Finance Committee, Agric and Cocoa Affairs, I've been overwhelmed by the detail and the rigor with which members have critiqued. But otherwise, I must say that all in all, I mean, if you are looking at the fact that Parliament itself should be representing people properly, I like to side with what a notable American politician said, that no man's life, liberty, or there are instances where they've taken decisions that inure to the negative benefit of the entire citizen, especially when it comes to passing of budgets. So these are my preliminary remarks.
I see. Great one. So nice one. We'll dive into more of those. Honorable Ayariga, you are in Parliament. You've been in Parliament. I think you're in the 4th, 6th, 7th, 8th Parliament. Is that correct? Yeah. And so, I mean, you have a good view of what this Parliament, the 4th Republican Parliament, looks like. What's your take on that? You are a participant in a player in that Parliament.
Well, thank you very much for, and good morning to my colleague panelists here, and then you, our host, and colleagues who are joining us via Zoom. To our listeners, context is important. The history is important. Where we started from is important. This is not the first Parliament we have. We have the immediate a legislative assembly that emerged through the decolonization process and ultimately becoming the first Parliament, National Assembly, under the CPP. And many people think the Parliament did not effectively check the executive. And so the President and Head of State, President Nkrumah, history says, assumed too many powers. And some historians will say those powers were not used in the best way, ultimately strangulating freedom and giving rise to a military coup d'etat. So a second Parliament, which is a second Republican Parliament, was designed having in mind some of the experiences of the first Parliament. And so we opted to go for a prime ministerial system where the head of state, the prime minister was a member of Parliament, and there was no executive, president except a ceremonial one. So there was a president who really didn't have powers, and all the powers were vested in Parliament with the head of state, who is the prime minister, in the parliament and the ministers also coming from the parliament, trying to copy the British system, the Westminster system. There again, there was a military coup, and then 1979, when we were going to the third Republican parliament, we said, okay, let's completely separate the two. Let's have, you know, a separate parliament from a separate executive. The president is out there with his ministers. They are not part of the parliament. We will solve the problem. You know, government will work well. The parliament will check the executive. So they separated it. First budget, they couldn't even pass a budget. So there was a coup. Some people allege that the dysfunctional nature of government at that time probably facilitated and gave some justification for the coup. So the experiment of having a separate parliament and a separate executive with no connection whatsoever, a good, it has served them well. We claim that that was a problem. So going into the Fourth Republican Parliament, they had in mind what happened in all these three parliaments and the governments and the democracy. And so they decided, okay, we're going to have an arrangement that merges the executive and the parliament halfway. So that half of the ministers should come from parliament for expertise that cannot be found in the parliament, and also for political balancing that cannot be achieved using existing members of parliament, so that president has some leverage. So that is one major feature of this arrangement. And of course, the parliament is there with the normal powers of a parliament to pass legislation, to check the executive, and etc. So this is the background. Now, when I listen to the earlier comments, I think the concern is with how effective has parliament been as a check on the executive. How effective has parliament been as a check on the executive? Clearly, there has been limitations in the capacity of parliament to be an effective one, that the party produces a government in office, and the party produces most likely a majority in parliament. It has near equal numbers, but consistently for the first, second, third, fourth parliaments, you know, up to this last one, you find out that the party that wins the national elections to produce the president tends to have the majority also in parliament. And what that has effectively done is to, you know, just enable a situation where the president uses his powers to tempt parliamentarians with ministerial appointments to get them to toe his line, because most people also have ambitions. And so for most parliamentarians, the ambition is also to become a minister of state. Very few really don't have that ambition. And knowing that it's the president that makes the appointment, it is very easy for the president to always get people to toe his line when his business is before the House. But that got worsened in recent times. It got worsened because the president now went beyond ministerial appointments and started appointing members of parliament as and the facilities extended to such members of parliament. Sometimes those facilities are even more comfortable than ministerial facilities. No, imagine being made the chairperson of ECG the board of ECG, which is one of the biggest institutions in terms of resources and facilities and opportunities, awarding huge contracts and etc. And just imagine, even if a president doesn't make you a minister and makes you the chairperson of a board, I mean, it might actually be more comfortable than being made minister for certain ministries I will not mention. You know, so the president started going beyond just the ministerial appointments and started, you know, co-opting MPs to their side. If they don't get them into, you know, a ministerial portfolio, then they'll put them as chairpersons of boards or even members of certain boards. And that created a situation where when you go and take the list of members of parliament on the majority side, you find out that almost everybody is serving the president in one capacity or the other. So clearly, you know, and of course, they belong to the same political party. So beyond just the common ideological inclination, there's also some material benefit coming from towing the line of the president. So that has tended to really disable, you know, the majority side to openly be critical of, you know, government policies. But like one of our colleague Franklin said earlier on, a lot of the action is often at the committee level. And at the committee level, which is without the cameras and the journalists, you find out that most people tend to be very frank about government policies and programs and provide very critical and constructive, you know, views and try to change things to reflect some more nationalistic interests. But immediately you put the cameras before them, the story changes. You know, people realign along party lines. So in a sense, the structure of the Constitution and the permit for the president to co-opt people on his side onto key positions in the executive has really disabled, you know, many of those people, and they are hardly able to stand firm and join the minority side and etc. Now, when you also look at the minority side, the common thing is that we will say everything that we want to say, but ultimately, when it comes to the vote, you know, the majority will carry the day. And we need to strengthen the offices of the individual parliamentarians, because to be able to serve as an effective check, you need to be well informed. And so it is only recently, in fact, in the last two parliaments, that Parliament started assigning research assistants to parliamentarians. And even those research assistants, they don't really even have a budget for research. So they are there as research assistants of parliamentarians, but without even a budget for research. So how they are going to carry out the research work is left to the individual parliamentarians. So they end up just, you know, working within the premises of Parliament. Whatever information is available within the precincts of Parliament, very often is what they can lay their hands on, what is in the library or what they can Google and get on the internet. If you ask them to go around the country to gather data for you, you will have to bear that cost yourself as a member of Parliament. Information. We tend to be held by the work of people like CDD and Imani and Co. and those think tanks, ASEPA, when they put out research findings that they have conducted. Very often that is what we tend to rely on. As individual parliamentarians, you don't have that resource base to go out there and then carry out some in-depth research yourself.
So the point you're making is that for Parliament to be more effective, I mean, the state must take the research, you know, equipment of the MPs a bit more seriously by allocating funds for same.
Yes, and then the second thing is that this is coming from the public, and I think it has also been generated advertently or inadvertently by the parliamentarians themselves, that confusion in the mind of the public that the member of parliament is responsible for the development of the constituency. It has been a major flaw of our parliamentary democracy.
But you brought that upon yourself.
That's what I said, advertently or inadvertently. Parliamentarians have created that impression to the public that they are responsible for the development of their constituencies. And that has tended to take away a lot of attention from the work of Parliament, because the individual parliamentarians want to actually do development in their constituencies. Instead of raising the issues in Parliament, they want to do the issues, to deal with the issues themselves. Schools, and are proud to display the number of schools that they have built. They want to build toilets themselves. They want to construct roads themselves. They want to construct bridges themselves. They want to extend electricity to rural areas themselves. They want to drill boreholes themselves.
That brings the votes.
Because our people hardly appreciate that the role of a parliamentarian is an advocacy role and not a concrete development role. So whilst you are busy doing the advocacy, people who don't have capacity to do advocacy will go on the ground and be mobilizing to do the actual development. And, you know, between the person who is just stretching the bread to you and the person who says he's going to go and make noise so that bread will be brought, people will readily, you know, align with the person who is stretching to them, you know, a piece of bread. And so most MPs have been forced to mistakenly join that fray and to go out there and try to individually, you know, do development. And the executive has worsened the case, because the executive, when they try to send development to constituencies, have tried to use their parliamentarians as a medium to deliver the development, to give their parliamentarian an edge over political opponents. You know? So all these things have really confused the atmosphere and misrepresented what really is the role of the parliamentarian. So the MP may not care about the vote in Parliament. He won't care. You will be sitting here and say, why haven't they voted against that agreement? And think that Parliament will be unpopular, but he doesn't care. Because he knows that he has supplied boreholes to that village. He has drilled another one over there. He has built a school there. So no matter what you think of him in Accra, he will win his election back home. Are you getting the situation? So the sentiments being expressed in Accra about how Parliament should function is one thing, and yet the reality on the ground back home in the constituency of the parliamentarian is another thing.
I see.
So this, you know, lack of alignment enables parliamentarians to fail us, you know, quote and unquote, to fail us based on your perception of what Parliament should be doing, and yet to be very fine back home in his constituency. So I don't know how we're going to deal with that problem, you know, but
for example,
yes.
maybe so just a 1 minute answer. I want to go to Honorable Aban. You think that the election of DCs or MMDCs would solve that problem largely? Because if the MMDC is elected, he obviously would have gone to the people to campaign. And so the people don't see just the MP as the one who owes them, quote unquote. The DC would have gone to them with this program to get elected. So matters like that, the MPs can gradually take themselves out of the developmental role they have assumed to the advocacy and the representational role and all of that, holding the executive in check, etc.
Yeah,
and then lead that gradually to the elected MMCs or yes, MMDCs.
Yes, that would have helped. That would have helped where there are two
elected
people in the same geographical space. In fact, three. The president is elected within the same space. The parliamentarian is elected within the limited space of the constituency, and then the MC is elected within the space of the district. A district could be bigger than a constituency. It could be 2 or 3 constituencies put together. So that would have helped you know. But for this disagreement between the parties about whether or not they should run on partisan platform, that was what actually divided the two political parties. That really, you know, influenced a lot of the votes.
We've not seen you MPs, or we've not seen the political structure revisit that conversation. It appears it's something that the populace or the citizens are very interested in.
Yeah.
But given the nature of this parliament,
even I believe that it is useful. I've been in the ECOWAS parliament, and that sends me around the sub-region a lot. And in most countries in the sub-region, the mayors and chief executives tend to be elected by the people, and it increases the accountability stake. But it's not just that. Also, we need to look at the issue of the common fund, which is shared between the assembly and the member of parliament. It gives a wrong impression of the member of parliament being a development agent. But it was meant to just support the MP. You know, he goes to a community and then they have some minor problem. It was meant to be like a budget that enables him to address petty matters. But it has come to be misrepresented as if he's equally a development agent.
I see.
So we need to rethink the resources that we send to the parliamentarian and what we expect the parliamentarian to do. There's this discussion about building constituency offices for members of parliament. And I would have thought that if that happened and there was a budget for the operations of the office, maybe we could rebrand the common fund money as just an administrative and research support for the parliamentarian instead of resources meant for actual development work. So that's one of the issues. But then one of the reasons, and we almost always, you know, don't say it. One of the reasons also is the question of competence and capacity.
Honorable, you hold on with that competence and capacity. We'll come back to it. Honorable Alban, welcome to the program. You have been in Parliament and you are out now. You were in the last Parliament, but you are out now. What was the impression people have of Parliament being once upon a time an insider and now an outsider? You think that the people have been happy with the work of the legislature? Of course, we've had a long history, but specifically this Fourth Republican era, you think people have been happy? Because when you meet people, they tell you what you've done as member of parliament. Now that you are outside, they tell you a few other things. Putting all of that together, you think that people are happy with the work of parliament?
Thank you very much. Good morning to our cherished viewers. Good morning to my friends there. It's been a long time since I came there. The question as to whether Parliament or whether people are happy with the work of Parliament depends on which people you are talking about. Probably the of its real work as prescribed by the Constitution and the laws. Those who are not so endowed, and in fact they are in the majority and are in the countryside, they are not looking at the work of Parliament in terms of what has been prescribed by the Constitution or by the laws, but like my brother Ayaga said, they are looking at the work of Parliament in terms of how much physical development you bring to them. And sometimes it crosses from even physical development to socio-cultural issues. How often does he come here? How often does he come for funerals? How often does he meet us to greet us? Is he always in his air-conditioned car and he has rolled up? You may be the best in your real parliamentary work, but if these socio-cultural matters, together with the physical development that they want to see because they consider the MP to be the development agent, if these things are lacking, I can assure you that you will see your way out in the next elections. So it depends on who you are talking about. If it is those who have some knowledge of the laws and the Constitution, they will try and look at the quality that you bring. That's when they will ask
I mean, I remember people, I went for a program, and when I finished, people were asking, so how did his people vote against him? With all the things that he said, with all the knowledge that he displayed, with all the, you understand that? But when you come to my village, they are looking for whether they were looking for some project, whether I've been able to do it. They are looking for their road to be constructed, whether during my time that road has been constructed. These are the things that they are looking at. Because my friend Ayaga knows, as I do, that there have been some MPs who may have even had 4 consecutive terms. Every time successful, they come to Parliament. But whether at committee level or whether at the plenary, they have never said, Mr. Speaker, before.
Yeah, I think I think he did allude to that. He did give that example. But hold your thoughts. I will come back to you. Want to take a short break? I will come back to you so you conclude on the points you're making. This is the big issue on 97.3 Citi FM. My guest, Franklin Kujo, Mahama Yariga, Dr. Rashid Rahman, Paula Brown-Pamensa, and Alexander Aban. We're looking at 30 years of parliamentary democracy, whether it's been an effective arm of government or not. And my guests have been proffering their thoughts on it. We'll take a short break, return, and then welcome our TV viewers, and then we'll continue with the discussion. We'll be back shortly.
Citi TV is live. On DSTV, go to channel 363. On GoTV, access Citi TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access Citi TV on your television. Citi TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and StarTimes box. Citi TV, it's your world. Citi TV is live. On DSTV, go to channel 363. On GoTV, access Citi TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access Citi TV on your television. Citi TV can be accessed.
You're welcome back to the big issue. A very big welcome to our TV viewers. We have been looking at the matter of our parliament, 30 years of parliamentary democracy, whether it's been an effective arm of government or not, and also asking some questions whether the political parties, at least the 2 major ones, have been overbearing or too overbearing on the work of parliament in terms of getting their MPs or their members to think along certain party lines. How has our parliament dealt with its function, representational function? Have they been looking at the national interest or the partisan interest or the constituents' interest? What's the human resource, the quality of human resource in that parliament? Is the structure of the parliament the problem? Majority of the MPs from parliament, or how should it be? Honorable Ayariga, who's one of the guests, is graciously taking us through a historical journey that indeed we've experimented with almost all the types of parliament, the parliamentary supremacy type, where prime minister and his ministers are from clean break kind of parliament. Presidents are very separated from parliament and they do their work as executive, more like the U.S. system. We have also tried to look at the matter of the election of the DC, whether that will change it or will change the problems we have. MPs portraying themselves, inadvertently or not, as development agents, paying school fees, building roads, building hospitals, or promising to do all of that. Is that a way to go? And how do we change that mentality from the people? Because it puts a lot of burden on the MPs. That makes it difficult for them to be effective as members of parliament. My guests helping me do the discussion are Franklin Kujo, Mahama Yariga, Dr. Rashid Rahman, Paul Abraham Pamensa, Alexander Aban. And before I went for the break, the Honorable Alexander Aban, who is a former member of parliament for the Goma West, was on the floor making a point. So, Honorable, you are on the floor making a point. Can you conclude on those points, please?
Thank you very much. We're talking about whether our people appreciate what we are doing, whether we are doing right or not. And I told you that it depends on which class of people you are talking about. So that point is well stated. The next issue is about whether Parliament, by its structure, the way it is, whether it is playing its functions very well. We may have to here quickly look at the functions so that we can appreciate it well. We have the deliberative functions, we have the oversight functions, then we have the legislative functions where they go to pass laws and all that. Now, when it comes to oversight, unless you have a very good minority who try to look critically at government business that is brought, especially when it comes to loans and other things, those who are in parliament and are aligned to government are not so critical of what government has brought. That leads us to the thinking of whether the political parties have overbearing influence on their MPs. Indeed, that is the case. So that when you go to parliament, you realize that most often, if government brings anything, except on a very few occasions where you may have dissent within the government party people, all the people who are aligned to government are likely to go along with it, and they will defend it. You also see that almost everybody on the other side of the political divide will also criticize it, as though we don't have independence of thought by the various individual MPs. That's a problem that we may have to look at, because sometimes if they see that you are taking a position which is not the position of the party, before you realize, they would put some candidates against you from your own party to oust you. And so any MP who is desirous of going back to parliament is always very cautious what he must say, especially publicly, and what he must not say. The other thing has to do with the Constitution. And here, we should not blame the framers of the Constitution, because the provisions in there where 50% at least of ministers are drawn from Parliament is a response to a historical issues where there was that clean break, and the Liman government brought its budget and it was jettisoned by the parliamentarians, including those who were aligned to the government party. And so they felt that, okay, if we should bring this kind of balance, what we may describe as balance, whereby we draw some of the ministers, at least half, curb what happened. But I think that probably we were too quick in responding to that, because we did not experiment that 1979 Constitution for a very long time. And it has now come to us. It has now dawned on us that, look, in trying to solve that problem, we have created a huge one. The huge one we have created is that it has muzzled Parliament, if I should put it that way, especially when every person who is in the government party would want to appear good to the appointing authority so that they would be found favorable by the president to appoint them. If you look at the recent Ken Must Go issue, right, say anything, or those who seem to have defended Ken and the status quo, some of them seem to have been rewarded with just even the few recent appointments that came. So those things are always on the mind of any MP who is on the side of government. And that's why I'm saying that when it comes to the oversight responsibility, unless you have a very good minority who would, if I say, scrutinize these agreements and government business, we may only see ourselves being a rubber stamp parliament, especially when the government party has overwhelming majority in parliament.
I see.
So that's
yeah, I see. That's interesting. That's nice. I mean, when you speak to the MPs, their views are aligned on these matters. So I get that. A lot of the things Mama Yariga said, we have also re-emphasized. Now, I want to get back to Dr. Rashid Rahman with he has an 11-point agenda for reform of Parliament. I will give you about 8 minutes to help us appreciate this oath. Okay, so I'll come to you. I'll come to you. So we look at those 11 points agenda for reform. But Honorable Brampa, when you hear all of these, the matter of the structure of Parliament comes up. Article 78. Appointing more than half of members of Parliament, ministers from Parliament, etc., etc. Like Honorable Mahama and then Honorable Alexander Aban have said, it was to solve a certain problem, but it appears we have created a bigger problem out of that. What should we be doing? I'm not sure it is an entrenched position. What should we be doing? You think the members of Parliament themselves don't like it, or you think they like it, and should changing it be a difficulty?
Well, let me say this Parliament and our honourable members have been frank on some of the issues and challenges they face. I remember when we did a research on the cost of politics, and we were speaking to the members of Parliament to find out how much they spent and whether it was a worry. Even when we made the research findings, no MP question on that denied the fact that it's a burden that we have. When we were launching the 30 years of Parliament in the Fourth Republic last Thursday, and Honorable Osechi Mensaboso, Honorable Kesasi 14, both said that we need to revisit our constitution. There's an issue and a call from civil society organizers like Imani, CDD, Ghana. We need to revisit our constitution. Probably second review of the constitution and critically looking at some of the aspects that we have mentioned here to see that, yes, as Honorable Aban said, the 79 constitution was the shortest one that we had. It was an experiment. It didn't even live to the first half of the first quarter of the month of the term, just 79 to 81, 2 years. So how effective can you assess the performance of that constitution? So coming back, we need to revisit. But unlike the previous constitutional review that we started, I think this should have to come from a very good background, a critical analysis of a concept as to what to be reviewed. And why we need to review certain aspects of the Constitution. So preceding even the recommendation for review should be a critical analysis of the problems and the challenges coming from the people who practice the Constitution themselves, the people who talk of the law themselves, from Parliament itself, before civil society and the general public council. So there's the need to revisit our Constitution. But one critical point that always we don't talk about is the people themselves. The pressure on Parliament, apart from the capacity gap, capacity in terms of professional support to our members of Parliament, is also the community pressure. The pressure, I was on radio and somebody asked me whether I would like to be a DC or MP. I said undecided. Undecided because I've had friends who are MP, I've had friends who are DCs. And when I visited one of my friends on 24th December this year, and I saw the queue in his house, I told him, Honorable, I don't want to be a DC. Because I was asking him how was he going to be able to satisfy the people who have come of them. And somebody came crying that the daughter was at the hospital. He went to the DC, he didn't go to his family head. So the pressure, the resource cap at Parliament is not only the pressure that we have. The pressure comes from the community. So that bit, we need to work together with media, with civil society, with the MP themselves to try and do a thorough community sensitization.
But you think the MPs are interested in, of course, they will talk about it, but you think they are interested in resolving that? Can they be bold enough to go to the people and tell them, guys, this is not my work. My work is to represent you. My work is advocacy. My work is...
in advocacy...
Can they be bold enough to do that?
There's service is not allowed to form labor unions. They are not allowed to do demonstration, other things. But they have the inside problem. When you're discussing with them, I say, well, this is it. So if CDD can take it up, there are things that you don't expect people in the soup to initiate. You expect people to speak on behalf of people only if they will give their commitment and the collaboration for you to do. They can support you with whatever information they have background. Then that's the duty of civil society organizations, advocating for change in the system. You spearhead it, even though you have the information from the people in the soup. But you spearhead the advocacy, you lead the advocacy. In fact, one of the duties of the National Commission for Civic Education is constitutional education. Rights and responsibilities. So the NCE itself can take this as a major educational program for the entire year of their calendar, their civic week, everything, to let people know what is the actual role and duty of MPs. But the MPs can also help us.
Yeah, but the MPs should be aligned on that, because if CDD or NCC or ASEPA or Imani are helping them do this, they shouldn't go back to the committee and tell them that they will build a road.
That's why I'm coming. The MPs also have role to modify their campaign messages, modify their ways of doing things.
But another guy is promising a lot, and he appears to be getting the masses, the momentum.
It's a challenge if we don't have a consensus that we'll preach with from among the MPs themselves. Both, as Honorable Adonoo was saying, after his program on radio or TV, people were wondering why was this a competent man voted against. People are not thinking about your competencies in the House, as they said. They are thinking about what you can provide to the constituency. How do you modify it from the
consensus is ever reached? I mean, from your experience with dealing with MPs.
Very difficult. Very difficult,
yes.
because...
Would they even follow it? Because I'm losing, because I want to stick to the consensus. The other guy who doesn't care is promising all over the place.
That's what I'm saying. It's very difficult. It's competition, and competition have tricks. So whilst we might have even resolved at party level or inter-party level that this is the message that we are going to send. This is what we are going to excuse ourselves from saying from now going. Don't let us do this, don't let us do that. In competition, in election position, tricks and manipulations always come up. So that's the aspect we deal with. The second aspect is what you ask. Will the election of MMDC solve some of these problems? Yes. It can contribute, not the entirety, but it can contribute to the solution and reduction of burden on our MPs. Now, the DCs are seen as national governments because they are representative of the government on the field. They don't hold them typically accountable as they hold their MP because they never elected any DC. They did elect MPs. So the accountability from the citizens, the bottom-up accountability, is always a pressure on the MPs. The DCs have a very few one, and mostly the pressure on DCs are from their political parties. So whilst the MP sometimes, even though align most with their party supporters, it cuts across party levels. But the DC has a small pressure always coming from the other party executive, the constituency, or political party. So election of MMDCs will help reduce some of the burdens on the MPs, as you said. There are other things that we can talk about when we come there, but I think there are some of the constitution must be revisited, and the sensitization issue might come. The election of MMDCs might be looked at.
I see. This is a big issue on radio and on TV and on Citi TV. We've been looking at the issue of 30 years of parliamentary democracy and asking whether it's been an impactful arm of government so far and all of that. A few things have come up. Pressure on MPs, the MPs' role in delivering their functions, representational, deliberative, control of the public purse, etc. And it's appearing that we need to do more, but the community is also important because the community overburdens somewhat the member of parliament and makes him or her unable to deliver properly. But the MPs also have a role. They go about telling them what they want to do. They will build this, they will do that, they will do that. But as we just heard from our last speaker, Mr. Brampa, it is the symptom of competition. And he thinks that some consensus must be reached. But whether that consensus will be respected in the heat of competition is another matter. Dr. Draman, I nearly called you honorable. You've been dealing with MP, so I think it's in order to call you honorable. Honorable Dr. Draman, yes, you mentioned the 11-point agenda. Can we hear you on that? Maybe some 7 minutes to deal with the 11-point agenda, then we can see what we do with it.
Okay, thank you very much, Selorm. So I think my first point is that we should start from where this all begins. That is with the political parties. I think some of that has been said already. That is, the mother that gives birth to all our parliamentarians who sit in the 275 member chamber. As you rightly indicated, they are there on a ticket of a political party. And if you want to be independent-minded, you should perhaps maybe run as an independent. I mean, we know the difficulties that these entail. So my first point is, transparency and fairness in how political parties operate in this country, particularly in choosing candidates and so on and so forth. Then related to that is the fact that we want to see very little or no meddling of the political parties in the affairs of Parliament, at least publicly, because that gives Then, I mean, as you indicated, when we had the rebel MPs calling for the head of the finance minister, we heard what came from the party headquarters. I mean, all these do not give a very good image in terms of our members of parliament being independent-minded. I mean, clearly they come from political parties, but once they are voted, I think they have allegiances to other stakeholders in the country beyond simply their political party. So that's my first point, Selon. The second one, very quickly, is that we need to terminate the marriage between the legislature and the executive. This is Article 78(1) of our Constitution. I think that has also been touched on by some of my co-panelists. My third point is Article 94(1), which is the qualification to be a member of Parliament. This is very open, and today members of Parliament deal with very, very complex issues. I think Honorable Ayerga will tell you, even if you have a PhD in law and they bring something to you that borders on finance, it becomes quite difficult. So imagine those that do not have maybe the qualification that will make them to at least have some basic understanding of some of these complex issues. My fourth point, Selorm, is that we need to democratize the processes related to our committees in Parliament. What do I mean by this? I think we have to move from a situation where currently the party who the practice. And then related to that, my next point is that we should make committee practices and procedures a bit more proactive. I mean, if you look at Order 1921, I think it talks about the fact that, committees have to be instructed, or committees have to be, matters have to be referred to committees before they can take up action. If, for instance, we are sitting down and there's flood in this country, and a committee of parliament wants to move and look at this matter, they have to wait until the matter is referred to them by the Right Honourable Speaker or by Parliament.
But is that really the case? No, is that really the case? Because I recall even recently, a committee visited the Saglemi housing project. I don't recall any instruction from Mr. Speaker that they should do that. And
well,
of course, yes.
Well, I think, yes, Honorable Ayerga is there. Maybe he can clarify. But okay. Whatever it is, there is ambiguity if you read the standing orders. There's no instances where members will say they go out and do some work, but because the matter is not referred to them by the House, it's very difficult to get it on the agenda of Parliament. Okay. Let Honorable Ayerga perhaps provide more clarity. Let me go through my points. Yes. Then the next one is the issue of the caucus leadership. I think we have to see some democratization of this as well, coming on the back of the recent NDC reshuffle and all the challenges that came with it. I mean, there is no clarity. A party will sit down at its headquarters and decide that, a caucus that has 137 members, this is your leadership. I think there are problems with that, and our parties will need to look at this. Then my next point, Selorm, is that we need to regulate and try to find a way of operationalizing representation. Honorable Ayerga has made reference to the fact that, for instance, they don't have offices in the constituency. You go to some parliaments in Southern Africa, almost every MP has an office in his constituency. If I want to find my MP right now in my constituency, I have to chase him and be lucky to find him anywhere I could find him. And Selorm, related to this is the fact that, oversight to some extent is regulated. They sit in parliament, they work at the level of committees and so on. Lawmaking, the same. I haven't seen any clear, if you like, guidelines in terms of the fact that these are the periods when members of parliament necessarily have to be in their constituencies. So we hear over the years, a lot of citizens complain, we don't see our MP until he or she is looking for our votes and so on and so forth. That has to be looked at very critically so that we have a way of ensuring that democracy, that this representation is regulated in such a way that we all have access to those two representatives so that they can articulate our views. Because as Honorable Ayerga said, their role is more advocacy, but not what it has been over the years. Then my next point, Selorm, is, we've talked about the vetting of ministerial nominees and all the challenges, particularly in the recent ones that we have seen. I have called over the years for decentralization of this vetting process so that a committee on agric vets the minister designate for agric, a committee on defense, and so on and so forth. Then my next point, and this is becoming a very serious problem for most of our countries. Parliament must have a committee that should deal with debt management and debt ceiling. I have seen one parliament that has recently taken this step. That's the Parliament of Kenya. Otherwise, perhaps it's not the last time we are going to be saddled with this huge problem that threatens to derail our democracy. Selorm, my next point is that we need to improve integrity in Parliament. And what do I mean by this? The way the Privileges Committee of Parliament works. Over the years, I think many of our citizens have complained that Parliament has failed to regulate its own. Whenever a matter is referred to the Privileges Committee, people would say perhaps that's the end of that matter. And very recently, we saw what happened in the case of the 3 honorable members who were referred to the committee for failure to show up and do their work in Parliament. We all saw what happened regarding Honorable Ajwasafo and so on and so forth. And then, Selorm, finally, I think my very important point here is research and analysis in support of members of parliament. Honorable Ayaraga has made reference to the fact that we even have research support. When, for instance, a very important document is referred to a committee of parliament, members are on their own. Over the years, we've been working with Parliament to set up a budget office, parliamentary budget office, or what do they want to call a scrutiny office, or a policy analysis office, and so on. That has not happened, despite a lot of effort that has gone into this. There is a research department, but that research department is still currently being built. So you have maybe about 20 or so researchers. If you want to do a ratio of 275 members to researchers in Parliament, I mean, you can imagine, the kind of burden that goes on these individual researchers. If we don't have that, then I think in most cases, members of Parliament will be shooting in the dark. Because as I said, even if you have the highest qualification in a particular field, there is no limit to the matters that Parliament deals with. Finance, the other day they are dealing with legal matters and so on. So even if you have the best of qualifications, I think like we see in some of the advanced democracies, in the US, for instance, they have 400 researchers that work in the Congressional Research Service, and they have about 300 experts that work in the Congressional Budget Office. All these to support the work of members of Parliament, so that if there's an issue, at least they very quickly go into the issue, do proper analysis, and provide members of Parliament with maybe just a 1-page or 2-page analysis. That would help them to go into the chamber and debate the issues from a very informed position. I've said all these, Selorm. Somebody would ask, how would all these change perhaps how our Parliament would look like? I mean, all this will not change if one condition doesn't change. I think that condition is the issue of integrity on the part of those who lead us, the issue of integrity on the part of our members of Parliament. That one, I don't have an answer to it. I think every individual member who goes into the chamber, I think must know that history will judge them in terms of how they perform their duties. And the issue of integrity is key here, because most of the time, most of them are not ignorant about what to do. I think they are constrained by a number of these issues that we've talked about. So I rest my case here, Selorm.
Yes, interesting points, 11 points you made. But just a quick few points. You're talking about the termination of the marriage between the legislature and the executive, calling for a proper separation of powers, as the concept tries to portray. But would the MPs agree? Of course, a lot of the people who go to Parliament actually want to be ministers. And in order to do this, the Constitution must be amended. I mean, it is not an entrenched position. The marriage between the two, from my reading of Article 290, is not an entrenched position, which means that Parliament can, marshal itself together and then pass it, I think, with a 2/3 majority or something like that. You think that they will want to take from themselves this power? So we can say it that we will want it, but would the MPs themselves want to take out that attraction of becoming a minister of state by virtue of you being an MP? Would they want to take that power away from themselves and say that it should be a clean break?
Yes, indeed, Selorm. I think you are right on that. I mean, I have described our years ago when we were talking about some of these things. And let me say, during the constitutional review process, we had a national conference at the conference center. And I remember Dr. Atuba and the committee at the time gave me the responsibility of leading the discussion on the submissions related to Parliament. And there were two key issues at the time that we were discussing. Number one was this qualification to be a member of Parliament. And number two was the issue of integrity. And the issue of integrity is key here, because most of the time, most of them are not ignorant about what to do. I think like we see in some of the advanced democracies, in the US, for instance, they have 400 researchers that work in the Congressional Research Service, and they have about 300 experts that work in the Congressional Budget Office. All these to support the work of members of Parliament. So even if you have the best of qualifications, members of parliament were up in arms, those who attended that session. Let our people decide who they want to send to parliament. It's not for any constitution to tell us what qualification you must have. Number two, I think, was the issue of said, let the president decide who he or she wants his ministers to be. And then some of them were even very sarcastic. We can't struggle and bring our party to power and then leave it to others to come and enjoy, if we can put it that way. And so that has been the bane. And you are right. I'm not too sure if we do a census of members in the House. I think more than 90%, as Honorable Ayerga has indicated, there are very few who would not be interested in ministerial appointments. So many parliamentarians see this as a stepping stone. Be in parliament and then cut the eye of the president, and then you have the luck of being a minister of state. I believe, Selorm, if we divorce parliament from the executive, I think we are going to see some very high quality of representation. We are going to see very high quality of debate, because those who go to parliament will be really those who are interested in building a career as a legislator, and not maybe using that as some kind of avenue through which they could achieve some other political ambition.
Very well. Another one, just quickly. You talked about regulation, I think it's point 7 or so. Regulation and finding a way of improving representation, and you did say that at some point members of parliament must necessarily be in their constituency. There should be a regulation or something to ensure that they are in their constituencies at every point, I mean at a certain point necessarily. But they have recess. So parliament sits during term time, you know, they have recess, and the recess is to afford them the opportunity to go back to their people, have discussions with them, and then come back with fresh ideas, come back and then do the work. So what then would the recess period mean if we are to find a specific time or a time for them to necessarily be in their constituencies? And being in their constituencies provided for that to be in the constituency.
That is the assumption, Selorm, but that is not what happens in reality. Not all members of parliament go back to their constituencies during recess. I think if you want to monitor closely members of parliament, I mean, that is the time that some of them travel outside the country and so on and so forth. You know, in the parliament of Tanzania, they have a period, not the recess period, they have a period that is dedicated to constituency work. So in their standing orders or whatever regulation that they have, they say during this period, that is a period when parliament, is in the constituency. During this period, that is a period when committees are sitting. So that when plenary is going on, no distractions, no committee meetings, and so on and so forth. In this, our parliament, over the years, I haven't seen, and even if it is there, the assumption that members of parliament have to be in their constituency during the recess periods. How do we regulate that? How do we ensure that members go through? I mean, it's in their own interest, because the more you are there and the more you interact with your constituents, the better your chance in terms of your likability and so on, and then maybe the better the opportunity for you to re-represent them when the time comes. Regrettably, not very many people, very many MPs go to their constituency during the recess period.
About the qualification, what should be done about the qualification? I thought the qualification, as provided for in 94(1), is broad enough. Do you want it restricted or narrowed, or what do you want to say? For example, you should have a university degree, or I mean, what should be said about the qualifications?
Well, I think in some parliaments, for instance, I was in Zambia. It says you must have grade 12 minimum qualification before you become a member of parliament. In other places, they say you must be able to read or read and write. I don't know. I'm not here to prescribe what the qualification should be. But my point is that, look, they deal with very, very complex issues. Even if you are highly educated, you are not in a position to understand all the issues that come before the House. So to leave it open, and then we have, for instance, if somebody has JSS qualification and he or she is in Parliament, I'm sorry to say, their contribution is going to be very, very minimal on many issues. And that's why, sometimes some people say a member will go to the House for 4 years and you never hear his or her voice. This might be partly due to and that's, their qualification is not able to match up with those difficult and complex issues.
I see. Interesting points. Franklin, the issue about the clean break, it's come up, we've discussed it even before Dr. Rashid spoke. You think that the members of parliament themselves will be happy with that attraction of being in parliament taken away from them, i.e. being appointed into executive positions? How do we approach that? Because it's a difficulty. If that is what we want, and because it's not an entrenched position, the MPs themselves, as a country, can come together and say, let's amend that part of the constitution. But the MPs should be critical because there's a prescription, as in the number of MPs who must come together, or in terms of the voting, to test also will have to vote for that. Can we scale that?
Well, if we are intent on, if we are bent on changing, if you like, the status quo, why not? That conversation can be broached. I suspect it can only be done through the law, and indeed the MPs, there must be a lot of conversation and probably bipartisan approach to dealing with it, because come what may, those who are in power would definitely like to be part of the executive, and so we have to navigate that particular path very carefully. But I think it's doable, and it's in the interest of Parliament itself, especially if they really want to, if it really wants to assert its primary rule. One of the rules is having oversight over the executive, because without that, really, Parliament's work indeed, Parliament's work will be quite difficult, and I think it is possible that can be scaled if the right conversations are had.
I see. How about democratizing the caucus leadership? Because that is important. For this parliament, for example, the leadership or the chairmanship of a caucus, I'm talking about the committee levels. It's so important so that the committee members themselves will decide who chairs the committee. How workable is that in the current scheme of things?
Well, again, these are rules that I suspect Parliament itself may have to work out. Otherwise, I was going to say that, what's the benefit of a hung Parliament, by the way, if we can't get this done? And in instances where we may not have hung Parliaments, I think this idea of democratizing the committees is a very forceful one and must be pursued.
I know you'll be happy with this one, the committee to deal with the debt ceiling or debt management of a country.
Well, without the doubt. Without the doubt. Beyond the committee itself, I think it should be a law that must be passed, that no government should be allowed to breach a certain level of what I call the debt iceberg. And so it shouldn't be at the committee level. This must be legislated and then adopted.
I see. Honorable Arega, you are in the thick of affairs. You have seen many parliaments work. This suggestion that Parliament, for example, the leadership or the caucus as a whole must see very little meddling, from the party itself. How possible or feasible is that? Of course, the recent issues about leadership change, etc., we spoke at length about it here. But is it possible to say that the meddling or the interference of the party itself the affairs of the caucus should be regulated or should be reduced. Can we say that?
No, I don't think so. I don't think you can seriously make a strong case for a party not directing its caucus. Truth of the matter is that the party is an organization that, as an individual member of parliament, you have subscribed to, and its ideological preferences. The party has worked hard to build a brand on which you have run as a candidate, and you have been elected into parliament on the ticket of that political party. So there's some constitutional commitment to protecting the position of the party being respected by people who choose to run on the ticket of the party. So we shouldn't pretend that our constitution does not try to protect party interest. So if you get elected on the ticket of a party and then you go to parliament and you don't want to abide by party positions on matters, clearly you're not doing the right thing. Very often, what the party pushes is the party's view of what is in the national interest.
Yes.
So, for instance, the NPP came to parliament pushing for e-levy. The NDC was against e-levy. But the NPP was convinced that the e-levy was needed to address the country's prevailing financial situation, even though a majority of the Ghanaian populace didn't really want to pay the e-levy. But that's a conviction coming to parliament with. So most of the time you may disagree, but that is the party's conviction about what is in the national interest, their view of what is in what should be the national preference. And so you may disagree with them what that national interest is, but that's their view of what is in the national interest. I mean, no party will ever instruct its MPs that go and kill somebody and that is in the interest of the party. No party will do that. So when policy options come up and they say, we prefer this option, and so all of you, follow this option. If you don't want, then next time don't run on their ticket.
Can you clarify for us what in terms of the committee practices, must they always be instructed or must a matter always be referred to them by the speaker before they
No. The speaker refers matters to committees to deal with. But each committee is supposed to draw up its agenda for the year. And each committee has a budget. The problem is that the budget very often, like most budgets, tend not to be released. But there's a budget for committee activities. And so it's up to you as a committee chairperson with your ranking and then your members to agree on your program for the year. And then to rise up to the occasion when matters that relate to your sector come up, even as an emergency or something. You're supposed to move. You are not supposed to wait for the speaker to direct you before you move. And if you go and then you make some findings and you come and you report to the House will deal with it. So it's all about the leadership of the committee. They can be a proactive leadership. They can also be a laid-back leadership. But there are no strict rules that prohibit you. The only rule that may prohibit you, the rule that there's no money to facilitate your movement as a committee.
So back to the no meddling point. Can you tell us what you guys were trying to do this week? The previous week, your party issued an edict of a kind. Don't approve the ministers. I mean, the new appointees or nominees. Don't approve them. I think you were in that press conference on Monday, and you did speak. What are you guys trying to do? You vet them, but you will not approve them, no matter how good they are. Didn't that prejudice the process? If you had waited, or your party had waited for the vetting to be done as a person, now you come back to say, well, we're not convinced by the answer, so don't approve of them. That would have been easier on the ear than to say that vet them, but don't approve them, no matter how good they are. What were you trying to put across?
Actually, it wasn't about their competence. To be frank with you, it had nothing to do with their competence. Many of them perhaps are competent. Many of them are personal friends. We've been in the House with them for years. And when you are in a place like that, you develop relationships across party lines. Sometimes it's so difficult to look a friend in the face and say, I will not vote for you. But the underlying principle and position of the party is that the size of government is huge, and it's one of the problems that we face in terms of public expenditure. We want to see a commitment on the part of the president to downsize government. Former President John Dramani Mahama, who most likely will be the flag bearer of the NDC, has projected that the country can be run with just 65 ministers. So 65 ministers. We now have over 80, close to 85, 86 ministers of state and deputy ministers of state. And so we're saying that, look, in these difficult times when we're asking pensioners, we're asking individual bondholders, we're asking institutional bondholders, we're asking our foreign creditors and etc. to forgo some of their monies and defer payment for their legitimate claims on the public purse. If we're asking them to make these sacrifices, we must also be seen meeting them somewhere, no matter how minor, no matter how symbolic. It might not be a huge amount of money, but just symbolic to say that, look, you know, we are also making sacrifices. Ministers decided to resign. The president would have used the opportunity. Okay, I have an existing stock of ministers that already people are complaining is huge. So why don't I just reposition the existing stock of ministers to occupy these ministerial vacancies that have occurred, instead of trying to replace them and maintaining the number at the levels that people are complaining about. So our principal position is that, look, you don't need to add new ministers, just 2 ministers or 3. One, the chieftaincy minister hasn't been well. 2 ministers have resigned. 1 minister of state, you know, resigned earlier. That is Charles Edubuahi. So you have about 82 ministers left. So just realign the ministries, some of them, and then reposition the ministers. And with the same 82 or 83 ministers, you could still run the government and send a message that, you know, government of Ghana is also reaching out in terms of making sacrifices, so that individual bondholders and pensioners and everybody else will also say, okay, let's also make the sacrifice. But you are not doing that, and then you're asking others to lose their money. So the position is a principle. It has nothing to do with the qualifications of the individual MPs. Why did we participate in the vetting? If we don't participate in the vetting and we don't participate in the vote, people will say, oh, these MPs, you can't trust them. You see, they could have disqualified the MPs by voting, and then maybe some of them nominees will lose. But they deliberately stayed away so that they can have their way, pretending that they are really against them. Because if we stay away and the MPP will have a quorum to transact business, they will vet them, they will write a report that says that the nominees, and once the report comes to the House that the nominees have been approved by consensus, you cannot say let's vote on the nominees. So we will participate in the vetting, and we will make sure that the report says that there has been no consensus. So that then compels you to bring them to plenary for a vote to be taken. And then at the vote, we will try and vote against as much as we can, even though you can't say anything about secret ballot. You know, for secret ballot, anything can happen.
Yes.
Either you can win speakership as we did, or, you know, how Kumsun will get voted, get approved as how Kumsun did. Yes. Anything can happen, yes, but you will put in your best effort.
Yes.
And so we didn't want to be accused of having conspired to get the people to go through in spite of our principled position. So when you in principle are against something, your actions must show that you are against that thing. So, you know, participating in the vetting was so that we will be able to say that there has not been consensus on them, and then force an issue of elections at plenary. If you win at plenary, well, we've done our part.
I see. Interesting. This is a big issue. We are coming to you live from our studio, 97.3 Citi FM, and on Citi TV, also live on Citi Tube, YouTube. Your comments are 020-444-7033. We've been looking at the issue of parliamentary democracy and the effectiveness of it, of our 30-year-old Fourth Republican Parliament, and what we can do to improve it. A number of things have been said, how to ensure transparency and fairness, what the role of the political parties must be in respect of this, the qualifications of members of parliament, what should happen to the leadership of the caucus, must they be voted for by the members of the caucus, or as it is now, the party will just appoint people, consensus or not, and get them to be leaders. What really must be the issue? Honorable Aban, there's been a point made about integrity. How do we ensure that the integrity of members of parliament is improved, which can, if you like, change the mindset of people about parliament and how they undertake their job? For now, as we have it, there's a lot of suspicion about what the members of parliament say, because they say they are politicians and you cannot trust politicians. What do we have to do about this? As MPs, you have been in and out. What can we do about this?
Thank you very much. As at now, it appears the use of the word politician evokes negative sentiments. Tricksters. They think that politicians are liars. They think that politicians would want to use every foul means to get what they want at the expense of the people. So you realize that anytime even the media people are discussing issues of national concern, development here, maybe some rubbish dump that must be moved and all that, they will not talk about the citizens. They will immediately zoom in to the politicians. Meanwhile, it appears to me that the politicians actually reflect the psyche, the lifestyle, and the thinking of the average Ghanaian. It is because sometimes the person who is complaining have not had the opportunity of being put at the position of the politician. Probably he would do worse. But having said that, I think that we as political class must start political office. It appears to me that the biggest incentive for any young man who is trying to enter politics is about how he amasses wealth and how he makes himself relevant to the people. It appears that that mistrust is so deep because somebody who was in the trenches with us gets to be in parliament by the stroke of luck and by the people who vote for him. And within 4 years, or after 4 years, he's so filthily rich and all that. How did that come about? These are all some of the things that feed into the suspicion and the thinking of the politician as somebody who is not trustworthy and all that. So we must look at all those things. We must look at the lifestyle of the politicians. We must do some kind of lifestyle audit because I was asked, somebody asked me for some money. In fact, it was not something that he was getting for any project or something like that. You know, those people who come to you, honorable, those kind of things. Then I gave the person 20 Ghana cedis. She said, they are buying payment, so I want me 20 cedis. They are buying payment, want me 20 cedis. Are they? We are in government. Why are you giving me 20 cedis? So the thinking is there, even among the populace, that as soon as you get into government, there are goodies. So that's why the fight for political power is so intense, because when you win, it's just like a war. So you win the election, you have won the war, and so you go to government and share the spoils. That has been the case.
I see.
And so you can get a political.
Yes, I'll get back to you for the final round of questions. Then we can wrap this up. But Honorable Ayariga, just briefly, this Parliament promised a lot, a lot, because people felt that the so-called rubber stamp parliaments we've had in the past were the problems, and now we have the hung parliament, 137, 137, one in between. Do you think that this Parliament has lived up to its expectation, first of all? Whatever the expectations were.
Well, I think that we're doing our best. People may not be satisfied, but we have, for instance, the Parliament held e-levy for close to 1 year and prevented e-levy from being passed until finally, through some maneuvering and etc., it was passed. But, we held the grounds for a very long time. It wasn't easy. Government wanted to pass e-levy. It was difficult. Is that okay? There are major policy issues that just the numbers alone have scared the government from even just bringing to us, because they know that if they bring this one,
will Japan be one of them?
Yeah, things like that. They just won't dare, because they know that they don't have the kind of numbers with which they could just railroad many things. There are appointments that have been held back for a long time. For instance, the Supreme Court nominees that were brought.
What's happening to that?
It was only, I think, yesterday.
Yes.
I think yesterday I wasn't in the chamber. I came and left for some other assignment. But yesterday was supposed to be presented to the House. But things like that, I held on until you have been able to achieve a consensus.
But what do you want the two other nominees to do, the Supreme Court nominees? I mean,
it will be resolved. It will be resolved. I mean, like I said, these are the kind of things that happen. People don't see these things because we don't go out there making so much noise. But these days, it's become very difficult for government to do anything, because you need to build consensus around the issues before we will agree. So, contrary to what people think, this Parliament has been very, very effective, because we've negotiated so many things. You come, we say, okay, fine, this has to happen. Yeah, we know we've run the country before, so we know that this has to happen, that has to happen, but it cannot happen this way. It has to happen this other way. And then when there's agreement, then you restructure it and bring it back, and then we push it. So, contrary to what many people think, they don't see us throwing chairs at each other and etc. So they think that we are not effective. But you don't have to be throwing chairs at each other all the time. So trust me, this numbers game has been useful.
You think the expectation of the public is over-bloated, or you think the public is expecting too much, from this hung Parliament, or you think the expectations are justified? Because people think
the expectations are justified. Because people want
were
to
disappointed
see
when those three ministers were passed in 2021.
People want to see Parliament serve as a real check on the executive. But the point I made earlier is that it's a majoritarian system, which is that you must always win the votes using your numbers. As we speak today, on any single vote that takes place where a simple majority is needed, and most issues are about simple majority, MPP should win the vote.
So they have one extra.
Because they have one extra.
And you are one down.
We are one down, and then MPP should win by at least 1 vote, unless people put enough pressure on MPP parliamentarians to also cross the line and vote with the NDC. So if the impression created is that NDC has not utilized its numbers, that's not the case. The only time when you see us being able to win an election is when it is secret ballot, like the speaker's election. It is because it was secret ballot. If it was, not a secret ballot, there is no way the NDC would have won
but
that.
But how Akumsin and Co were also secret ballots, but you lost that one.
Yes, those ones, people had all sorts of reasons. For instance, what were the issues against our Kumsin? Some people say, oh, she's not highly educated. Have you gone to check the CVs of the MPs themselves? The rest of the MPs. Have you gone to check their CVs? So people saw themselves in Hawa Kumsin. People saw themselves in Hawa Kumsin. So, NDC4, are you saying that if NDC comes to office, me too, I will not be qualified for a ministerial appointment? People saw themselves in Hawa Kumsin. I get the situation.
The Greek minister,
Yeah.
you guys said he was arrogant at the vetting, and a lot of people think so too. And the way he dealt with some of the issues were not convincing. That was what your team sent to the floor, kind of. But we ended up passing him.
You see, the party has control over its MPs. But look, you are representing a constituency in which there are MPP members, there are NDC members, but NDC members are more than MPP members. But all of you have a common chief.
So the chief calls
and the king. And there's a vote. And then the nominee goes to see the chief. And the chief calls you on the phone and says, please, your brother on the other side has been nominated. We are lucky that our kingdom has been blessed with a nominee to be a minister. Are you going to deprive me of a son who is a minister? Okay, you can do what you want and come back next time and say I should also help you to be MP.
Well, that's secret ballot. He will know you voted against him.
Once his will is not done, he has no way of knowing that you tried to get his will done. Do you understand the point? So there are forces beyond the parties.
I see.
And pressures beyond the capacity of the individual members of parliament. And sometimes the parliamentarians in their judgment ask very critical questions. Say, for instance, okay, fine. If I deprive this person of being a minister,
what do I get?
What do I get? Satisfy the public desire not to have this person become a minister because they say he's arrogant.
You save the state.
How do I save the state?
You save the state.
The man is arrogant. Do I know the person who will come in his place?
No, but so you keep changing.
The point I'm making is that people have different ways of judging and assessing. Some people, you agree, you meet as a minority caucus, and then you say, we won't approve this person. And that person comes from a certain region. Then within you, the people from your region, that region come and say, Abochi, this one, we are sorry. We will not be able to go along with you on this issue. They just tell you that we won't be able to go along with you on this issue. The person from our region, if he is taken out, we don't know whether the person will nominate another person from our region to occupy that place. And people believe that whether it's NDC or MPP, once somebody from their region occupies a certain ministerial portfolio, most likely that region will benefit from some development opportunities. And why are we all there? We're all there hoping to attract development. You won't say that you don't want development in your area simply because MPP is in office. So for the 4 years or 8 years that the MPP will be in office, nothing should come to your region. So there are so many forces at play when it comes to these nominees' approvals and the voting exercise. No side can guarantee you, of any outcome when it comes to secret balloting, when it comes to nominations to ministerial portfolios. You will do your best, you will try, you will make a statement, because the minority caucus represented on the appointments committee voted against all of them. Okay? And wrote a report which rejected consensus approval and forced them to be brought to the chamber. So to that point, you've done your best. The outcome of any secret ballot, and I keep telling NDC members and the public that, our secret ballot is, you can't determine the outcome. If we could determine the outcome, we wouldn't have won the speakership. Because we're less than them, but we won the speakership. So any secret ballot, you can't be sure how it will turn out.
Very well. Thanks so much, Honorable Mahama Yarega. It's a pleasure having you every time. Honorable Aban, I come back to you because you have also been there. Looking at it from outside, I don't know if it was a parliament you would have loved to be in, a hung parliament, one with a lot of difficulties. What would be your assessment of that? And do you think they have delivered on the expectations of the people?
Thank you. I think that, like I said, if you get a minority that is very critical, and not necessarily in terms of critique or the scrutiny of government business, because even if they are very critical, but the numbers are insufficient, they will have their say anyway, and government will have its way. But with a hung parliament as we have it, I think if government is introducing anything to parliament, they will think about it quite deeply before they present it. You realize that probably a Japan deal may have gone back to parliament or some of those things. You realize that the two Supreme Court nominees have not received their endorsement from parliament, most probably because the numbers are so close that if you take any risk, you may lose it. And so today, we would say that Parliament, through the activities of the minority, have achieved quite a lot, especially when it comes to oversight responsibility and checking, putting government in check. But there's still a lot of room for improvement because so long as all issues are looked at it from partisan lenses, even before we start thinking about the collective good and the voice of our constituents, we still have a long way to go. Because I have still not come to any good understanding why anything that is introduced by the government may find broad support from those on the side of government and may have stiff resistance also from those on the other side of the political divide. We should start looking at situations where individuals would vote based on their own convictions on the things that have been put before them. And I believe that is what will make us see that our democracy is growing. And like I said, all these things are impacted somehow by our constitutional structure. And so if we get, for instance, a clean break from executive and the legislature, we may have people who are on the side of government resisting strongly something that is coming from government, and they would do that based on their own conviction. But when they sit in waiting, hoping that they will be found and made ministers, you realize that they will not be able to say much. So, plus and minus, I think the hung parliament, some way, somehow, it's a blessing which we have not explored fully. So the bottom line for me is that for us to have a very effective parliament, something must be done with the constitutional provisions. That's what we cannot run away from it.
Very well. Thanks so much, Honorable Alexander Aban Esquire, former MP for Gomoa West. Franklin, what do you think about the hung parliament? Civil society was happy when we got these numbers. people thought that we'll always have some activity in Parliament. But here we are. The jury is still out, though. What do you think? And how do we improve it?
Except the rough tactics that were being adopted to eliminate some members of the minority of Parliament, it tells you clearly that the minority has held its own. I really love my heart to them, and I think they've done exceedingly well. I mean, look, the conversations about economy, they've been there, right? They've warned against profligacy, they've warned against our debt levels, they've warned against virtually everything. Maybe the other thing we probably need is, I don't know whether it would be too much to ask if voting should be done openly. You know, at least we need to know how members vote on very critical issues. I mean, in far-seeing democracies, I use this advisedly, you tend to see records of course, you see it in the Hansas, by the way, but you can't infer the way people vote from the Hansas in our parliament, right? So maybe we should ask for that as well. But on substantive issue, I think the hang parliament has been useful. It has made the executive a bit more careful, even though it's quite clearly still stubborn. But the minority has held its own, and kudos to them.
I see. Dr. Draman, I don't know whether you've seen this kind of. Oh, okay, Dr. Draman, we don't have him. So let me conclude with Paul Abrampa Mensah. I don't know whether we've seen this situation anywhere before, this kind of hang parliament. First of all, like I've asked the rest, do you think if not, why? If yes, how do we even improve it?
Thank you, Selorm. As soon as we finished these elections and we had a parliament, Institute for Security Studies in Nigeria consulted me to do a brief assessment as for the David Franklin and most serious. One, it could be effective if and only if there's less and less political influence on the minority. Two, it could fail if parliamentarians and the political parties use their numbers for expediency. So these were the two wider opinions that we had. But 90% of the experts we interviewed said that it's good for democracy. That was the stand.
But
after 2 years.
Yes, before that, there are two issues. So where has it placed so far?
That's what I said. So after 2-3 years, what do we see? As Franklin said, there has been ups and downs. They've tried. And let me say that most of the issues in parliamentary debate and discussion and consensus are done at a lobbying level, which is not public. So yes, there are issues that you and I are aware that have not come forth again, especially the Japa deal. It did not come because the oppositions were against it and they delivered against it. There are other issues that you and I might not be aware but have been blocked or being remodeled to suit the inputs from minority.
So the share, the share presence of the numbers. The fact that it's a hung parliament has scares the opposition away from
and has improved comparing to the previous, from the first to the seventh parliament. That issues will easily pass. Look at the Vodafone deal; it just passed through, but the opposition was against it. But now you can see, even if not all, some major issues have been blocked or modified to suit the opinion of it. So I think the hang parliament is good, but notwithstanding that there are issues. We are happy we saw Parliament launch a year-long activity to mark the 30th anniversary. We haven't had the opportunity to see the that they put a major activities on introspection, looking into themselves and the work of parliaments. How far after the 8th parliament, the 30 years, where have we gone and what can we do? Do an analysis as to the challenges they've outlined here so that we can Erica was telling us, even their traditional leaders have power and influence in some of the decisions they take. So it's a holistic introspection that should be done in the country to help improve the work of Parliament. We don't have a math if Parliament fails.
I see. I thank you so much for your time this morning. So grateful that you were able to join us on this very important matter of the 30 years of parliamentary democracy. My guests for this segment have been Mahama Yariga, Member of Parliament for Boku Central, Dr. Rashid Draman, Executive Director, Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, Paul Abrampa, Mensa, Senior Programs Officer, CDD, and Alexander Aban, former MP, Gomoa West. Of course, Franklin Kujo, a president of Imani Africa, was on the panel as well, but Franklin remains for the next panel. We will take a short break. When we return, we will now look at the matter of the vaccine shortage, whether it should be a concern, a cause for concern. We do not have childhood vaccines, that routine immunization, what we use for the routine immunization, BCG, for polio, for diphtheria. The state has run out of it, and it's been so since last year, in some cases February, but a lot of the people say it's been so since May, June. What are we doing as a people? How did we get here? Why wasn't anything done about it? Is it that government did not have or does not have money to procure those vaccines? What will be the effect or the immediate effect on the future of our country, the future of the young ones or the ones being born? Very, very serious matter. We'll look at that when we return. And indeed, Dr. Ejewa Tete, member of the Pediatric Society of Ghana, Dr. Thomas Anaba, Executive Director, Africa Center for Health Policy Research, and of course, Franklin Kujo will be my guest on that segment. Don't go away.
Na so form da so ye din ne senti ya hyehyɛ bibi sunko kra dia mamo ya to ne din sɛ high sense super promo ya niema ne buo no ya sa hwe ne nyina bio impo ye fa so mpo ye free so sɛ de be ye fa so dia ma ye call no first come first serve niema no sa na sa high sense super promo yi e we showrooms nyina e wo Ghana fa na nyina high sense Hisense one amount 5 years manufacturer defect warranty. Yeniema border from change dia kanina. E change dia kanina. Hisense change dia kanina. Na ye papa change dia kanina. Kayo, every 28 February, akofim 8 March. E ye Hisense super promo. Hisense, everyday prices for everyday people.
The Heritage Caravan 2023 is officially sold out. Get ready for 7 exciting days of adventure through 14 incredible regions of Ghana. Nature. Prepare for 7 amazing days of a road trip filled with the sights, sounds, and the aura of a diversified people. Get ready because we are going on the expedition of a lifetime to discover Ghana from the 4th to the 11th of March on the Heritage Caravan 2023. Pack your bags and let's set off on this spectacular tour from Greater Accra through to the Volta region, through to Eastern region, Ashanti region, Upper East region, Savannah region, Northern region, through to Northeast, Bono region, Ahafa region, Bono East region, Western North, Western region, and the Central region of Ghana. A journey full of fun, education, information, wonderful memories, and great bonding moments await you on the Heritage Caravan 2023. The Heritage Caravan 2023 is powered by Citi TV in partnership with the Ghana Tourism Authority, with support from Citi FM and proudly sponsored by Halak Ghana, the European Union, Malta Guinness, Ebony Condoms, Royal Company Limited, National Lotteries Authority, Baltic Mineral Water, and Colgate Natural Extracts.
Is this Nani Floor?
Yes.
What is it with pig feet? No.
Ghana is a country that's full of historical His ethnicity if it's not from your village? The season of all things Ghanaian is upon us, and we are here to celebrate an aspect of our Ghanaianness with the Back to Your Village Food Bazaar, happening live from the 25th to the 26th of March 2023 at the forecourt of the Accra Metropolitan Assembly. Come, let's treat ourselves to delectable, authentic Ghanaian cuisine from the northern, the middle, and the southern zones of the country that reflect our true cultural diversity. While at it, we'll be jamming to genuine Ghanaian music amidst games, competitions, storytelling, and so much more. Interested vendors of indigenous foods are invited to register. Don't let this be another missed opportunity. Call 0205-973-973 to book a stand and be part of the Back to Your Village Food Bazaar 2023. Anyamime, the country make hoto. So come, let's enjoy some good food, resounding music, heartfelt camaraderie, and remind us 26th of March 2023 at the forecourt of the sponsored by Voltic Ghana Limited and Malta Guinness.
You're welcome back to The Big Issue. We are live on Citi Tube, YouTube. We are on 97.3, and of course we are on Citi TV. We have been looking at the matter of Parliament, 30 years, whether it's been effective, hang Parliament, what we can do to improve it. The next segment really talks about the important matter of the vaccine shortage. We heard earlier in the week that we had run out of vaccines, and the situation had persisted since May, June, and in some cases February. And of course, when we were in primary school, we learned about the 6 childhood killer diseases: diphtheria, whooping cough, poliomyelitis, etc. And so these vaccines help protect the children when they are born until, they grow and they are not killed by these killer diseases. The situation we have now has been described as very serious, to the extent that we do not have vaccines. For months, we have run out of vaccines. And when the news broke, Parliament now, is hauled before its health committee, the health minister. We want to ask, where was the health minister, the Ghana Health Service, all the institutions of state in that arena? Where were they when we were running out of the vaccines? Was there no planning? What happened to the supply chain? Is it that we did not have money to acquire the vaccines, etc.? We will give you some answers today. But just to provide some update, there's widespread shortage of childhood vaccines used for routine immunization of babies from birth to at least 18 months. Vaccines for illnesses such as measles, polio, and tuberculosis have been in short supply in hospitals, a situation that has the potential to increase the vulnerability of children to the diseases and the vaccines seek to protect them from. Some nursing mothers are worried the shortage of the essential vaccines for infants will pose a threat to vulnerability to the diseases, etc. Meanwhile, the Ghana Health Service has attributed the shortage of some of these vaccines to the depreciation of the cedi. Speaking earlier in the week, the Director General of the Ghana Health Service said, that's Dr. Patrick Kuma Abuaji, says measures are being put in place to ensure that we get the vaccines in no time. Let's look at this report and come back into the studio.
Nelly, a nursing mother, tells Citi News her baby missed a polio vaccine last month due to the shortage across the country.
So the Ghana Health Service says that measles, tuberculosis, some other vaccines are supposed to be administered to your child.
She has missed one. That one too, they said they had a shortage, and then we were asked to go to the nearest hospital or clinic to get it. But I tried Polyclinic, Kanish Polyclinic, so that's the one closer to us. I tried that place too, so they also said they don't have it, so there's a shortage.
Aside from polio, the Ghana Health Service has confirmed the shortage of BCG, a vaccine for tuberculosis and measles rubella. The confirmation is on the back of widespread reports about the shortage for over a month. These vaccines under the expanded program on immunization have been shown to be effective in preventing disease-specific morbidity and mortality. But the service has assured the vaccines will be available in the
that we have run out towards the end of the year. This is the OPV, that's the polio virus vaccine. We have the BCG and then the measles rubella vaccine. We were supposed to procure in the fourth quarter of the year for 2023. Due to the currency fluctuation, the amount of funds that was available in cities could not meet them. So orders are being made now, and we're expecting that within the next 2 weeks, we'll be able to catch up. We know that we have shortages across the country in all those areas, but that's what the situation is. So we are working with the UNICEF and our partners to ensure that within the 2 weeks, we are able to bring in these 3 vaccines. All other vaccines.
Citi News visited the Greater Accra Regional Hospital Ridge, Kanishin Adabraka, and Kolebu polyclinics. Move from one health center to the other in search of these vaccines for their children.
Yeah, Miss yes, into me down, me mobile by him, na me person and corner petting. Yes, see, being you. Yeah, me didn't call fan, call barrier. Oh, na me call you.
And one of them no see a one.
Oh, honeymoon so I searching as a caba, kuna, a jamudi wa my. Damn, won't ye be on son and I never miss Uncle and say, ye be funny any penny I want. And it's a man called a for no my day, maba.
Urban with how many months?
Only 2 months.
2 months until last month on your vaccine.
Last month when you be.
This month in so when you be.
This month in when you be.
When I gave birth, the vaccine that they have to give to my baby at birth, that's the BCG. I didn't get it at the facility that I gave birth to, so they asked me to visit other facilities. Maybe I can get it because there's shortage of it. Yes, I have to roam from facilities to facilities. So I went to Shikura Community Hospital. I didn't get it. So they equally directed me to Mamprobi Polyclinic. Yes, and I went to Mamprobi Polyclinic and I got some there.
Mekuakawe, the Polyclinic, any Eshadai, any Iran clinic, almost a bino. Anything and then my bahas and Baba tries, maybe a many be Wahanumana.
Pediatric Society of Ghana, among others, have also joined the calls on government to, as a matter of urgency, take all the necessary steps to procure these vaccines. However, these mothers lament the shortage will increase the vulnerability of children to the diseases the vaccines seek to protect them against, hence an immediate intervention from the government.
Yeah.
So you were told to go to some other clinics for the vaccine, and you've been to some of these clinics, but you have been told that there's still a shortage and they don't have the vaccines.
Yeah, exactly.
And as a mother with a 5-month-old baby, how is this making you feel?
Well, I'm not comfortable with it because I think that will have an effect on my baby, something of that sort.
A hard drink, pa. If you say, well, you be a man, it's all you be. A bon pum who buy. All
right, so you saw that report, which tells the story on its own. So my guest, once again, Dr. Ejiwa Bonuedi, member of the Pediatric Society of Ghana, Dr. Thomas Anaba, Executive Director, the African Center for Health Policy Research and Analysis, and Franklin Kujo. Doc, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Yes, very interesting situation we have on our hands. How widespread is this shortage?
Well, it's pretty widespread.
Several regions in the country have reported shortages. Greater Accra, where we are, has reported a lot of shortages. We have many of our facilities who do not have one or another of the vaccines. Other regions like Eastern, Central, Upper East, facilities. So, and that's why from the report you had mothers combing from one facility to the other, because some facilities have, for instance, OPV, but they do not have the BCG. And some facilities would have measles, but then would not have, for instance, the pentavalent or the pneumococcal vaccine. So those are the challenges that we are facing now.
But I don't know how often this happens, but in your practice, have you seen such a shortage in the way you described it? Have you seen this before, or how close have we been to this situation before in the past?
I've been practicing for probably more than 15 years now. And really, this is the first time I'm hearing of such widespread shortages. So we do have shortages from time to time. However, those are in very limited circumstances. And you would usually have to just move to one other facility, or within some days or weeks, it stabilizes. The problem this time is that it has gone over for several months. People started complaining sometime last year. We thought the situation would get better. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be getting any better. And that's where we are now.
So what's the concern really of doctors and the people who deal with pediatric matters in the society? What's your concern about this problem?
All right, so the EPI in Ghana started somewhere in the 80s, and we have had massive results from the EPI, which is the Expanded Program of Immunization. If you look at some diseases like measles, in 2000, we had over 23,000 reported cases of measles in Ghana. However, if you look at the year 2021, we had as few as 52 cases being reported. And these successes are being chalked because of immunization. We have, for instance, measles, again, you would realize that we have about 94% coverage of measles in Ghana. And that's very high. And because of these successes, that is how come our cases are low. Therefore, if our immunization into the scene. For some of us in practice, we haven't, a lot of my colleagues have never seen a case of measles in their practice. However, now we're being confronted with the situation more, and so more people are having the unfortunate encounter of seeing measles at first sight, and not just reading about them in textbooks and on the internet and so forth. So our main concern is that what would happen should this go on for a long time? What happens to our children? Remember, our children are our future leaders. So our goal is to speak for these children who, unfortunately, are the vulnerable in society. They do not have a voice of their own. And so we are here to just bring out the issues and to get government, civil society, everybody who is involved in the process of getting vaccines in Ghana to be up and doing, and to make this a situation of the past. In fact, this is not a situation we want to ever go back to.
So in matters like this, I mean, as health practitioners, is there anything you can do, or you just watch the situation to just unfold? What can be done from your side?
So we started talking about this. We started engaging people as to what is going on. And that is why PSG is taking on this advocacy drive to bring out the issues that are occurring on the ground. We believe that everybody should know about it. Everybody should be informed. And together we should fight to make sure that this situation is rectified.
So the vaccines have to protect you from getting the disease in the first place. So in cases where the child gets the disease, are we able to treat the disease then, so that it's not as not resolving that particular situation? Is that the case?
Yeah, so a lot of these vaccine-preventable diseases are treatable. However, you may have complications arising even when treatment is given. And so, yes, the children may get the opportunity of receiving treatment, but what happens if, for instance, their parents do not seek health care early enough? Then they may not only have complications, but they may actually die of some of these illnesses, which could have been prevented in the first place.
I see. Let me speak to Franklin Kujo. Franklin, interesting situation we have here. What's your thinking around the situation? Do we know why we are here?
Oh, without a doubt, I think the Professor Kuma Buachi did say that during the week when Bernard interviewed him, and I think that the reason obviously is lack of money. If let me put it crudely that way, and I think we need to. I mean, that's what it is really. I mean, if there was enough money, if there was enough forex cover, I'm sure they would have beaten this particular challenge. So I'm not too sure about scenarios and planning. It had been planned, but certainly the money was simply not there, which makes it very interesting because, you know, I think the president had promised setting up a national vaccine institute, hopefully with some $25 million seed money. Those conversations are very critical and they must be had right now. But particularly on this matter, I think we all know what really the challenge is money. And that's why I think the affairs of a country, when it comes to economic management, must be taken quite seriously. So, I mean, apart from the professional stress that the lady and other professionals working within the healthcare sector are going through, I guess we need to start fixing our economy. I mean, this is a ramification of the challenges we've had with our economy. To describe it.
But is it enough to say that we do not have money? That's why we've run out of vaccines, when indeed we find money to do other things. What does it say about our, maybe it's planning, but prioritization of our affairs as a people? What does it say to that?
As you know, that this conversation can take us a whole day, and I'm sure you have referenced this in several of the big issues that we've had, right? And so we can conclude that conversation today when it comes to prioritizing what matters to a nation. And of course, health is a critical one. I do not want to sound like a broken record, but there are many examples of how we have not really of critical issues like healthcare. And so the jury is out, really, that we've not really done well when it comes to prioritizing these matters. And it's really a worry. It's a great worry.
So Doc, I mean, so in your circles, what has the discussion been really? Government has said that they are working so hard to get in some stock. What has the discussion been in your circles? You know, that we sit and wait, or what can we be doing before it comes? You know, what really has been the discussion? So in our circles, yes, we've been encouraging mothers not to give up, because one thing we realize is that a lot has gone on over the years. Mothers are eager to go ahead and seek vaccines for their children, but one challenge we fear may come with this is mothers. Yes, we've continued to encourage our mothers to seek the vaccines so their children can be protected. Beyond that, the Pediatric Society has also been engaging with other stakeholders to find out what the real situation is and to see what can be done. For now, the problem has already occurred, but we believe that it would not be enough for us to just solve these issues now if we do not prevent its reoccurrence in future. And so that is our main focus, that this should actually be a thing of the past.
government should be encouraged to do what we call ring-fence funding, such that budgetary allocations for vaccines are actually protected, no matter what other dire or pressing needs that the country has. The children should be secured in that light. And so those are some of the things that we've been speaking about.
So ring-fence funding, that appears quite interesting. But I think from what we heard from the Ghana Health Service, I mean, it is due to the depreciation of the city. So the funds could be ring-fenced, but if the city depreciates further, we may come back to this point again. What's your thinking around the setting up of the Vaccine Institute? And how would that change the situation we are in currently?
So, well, we believe that it may be of help. I'm not privy to all the discussions that have gone on, so I do not want to speak too much to that.
I see. So, what do the parents tell you? You know, that we live in a certain economic context. Parents will have to travel from one place to the other. They spend money they don't have, you know, and there's no vaccine. They go somewhere else another day, but they need a vaccine for their kids. Is it a concern that because of the economic challenge as well, and the lack of aid for money for parents to travel from place to place, getting the vaccines, parents will give up and then not try to get the vaccines anymore, which will lead to difficulties? Is that a concern that the society or your professional colleagues have expressed? And how well have you articulated out to the authorities? And apart from the assurance, what else have they been doing to address it?
So, you know, the vaccine rates have been increasing over the years. Initially, it was about 60%. We went up into the 70s and 80s. And now for most of the vaccines that are coverage, which is impressive. And so we really do not want to go back on this. Most of the challenges that parents have, yes, is having to come from one facility to the other. And that's where was better. Probably we could guide parents on where exactly to go or how often they should visit those facilities to be able to get the vaccines for their children. We as a society also want to encourage parents not to give up. Most of the vaccines are programmed such that they have the best results when they are given at certain particular times. But then the fact that you do not receive it at that time does not wane your benefits completely. And therefore we encourage mothers that it's rather unfortunate that we have not gotten it now. However, they should not relent on their efforts to get these vaccines for their children. The benefits which we have been having for now is because of herd immunity. So because over the years, most of our children have been vaccinated, it is one of the reasons why we probably are not seeing such massive outbreaks as yet. However, if the situation should continue, then that would have been a challenge. We are glad that, however, the ministry has put in efforts to make sure that we see this as a situation of the past in the next weeks, and we are hoping that it would actually come to pass.
What will you say is, or will you say that the acquisition for vaccines for COVID and all the efforts that were put in to ensure that was successful has had any effect on these other ones? Because people have said that because our attention was on COVID, we dropped the ball a bit when it came to these other things. Is that true? And is that a true reflection of what you think might have happened? That we
EPI has been running this program for over 20 years, and so the systems are well in place.
What EPI will mean?
Expanded program of immunization, and that deals with the availability of vaccines. However, I guess the right authority to talk on this is the Ministry of Health, because they do the procurement of the vaccines.
All right. So this is the big issue. We are looking at the issue of the vaccine shortage and what is being done to address it. The Pediatric Society of Ghana is not happy. They fear for the future of our children. And we're having a discussion with a member of that association or that society, Dr. Ejewa Bonuedi and Franklin Kujo, and we'll soon have Dr. Thomas Anaba on the line to speak to. We'll take a short break, return, come back and conclude the discussion. Don't go away.
For your friend Nadede, Semijina Ha, na Franco television, Papa, I'm with your begasono, and I'm a Gusua do one dance here. So was the hotels, offices, schools, apartments, a Franco television, a Babawa, a Brantier, open TV, the about them. Your size is very brave, you were 24 inches, you were 32, you were 43, you were 55, and I can see 65 inches. Wait, now pet day. Franco Trading Enterprise. And your television, papa, and your border from a him here.
The Heritage Caravan 2023 is officially sold out. Get ready for 7 exciting days of adventure through 14 incredible regions of Ghana with a promise of a rich cultural experience, introspective historical visitations, and exhilarating field days with nature. Prepare for 7 amazing days of a road trip filled with the sights, sounds, and the aura of a diversified people. Get ready because we are going on the expedition of a lifetime to discover Ghana from the 4th to the 11th of March on the Heritage Caravan 2023. Pack your bags and let's set off on this spectacular tour from Greater Accra through to the Volta region, through to Eastern region, Ashanti region, Upper East region, Savannah region, Northern region, through to Northeast, Bono region, Ahafo region, Bono East region, Western North, Western region, and the Central region of Ghana. A journey full of fun, education, information, wonderful memories, and great bonding moments await you on the Heritage Caravan 2023. The Heritage Caravan 2023 is powered by Citi TV in partnership with the Ghana Tourism Authority, with support from Citi FM and proudly sponsored by Halak Ghana, the European Union, Malta Guinness, Ebony Condoms, Royal Company Limited, National Lotteries Authority, Baltic Mineral Water, and Colgate Natural Extracts.
It's Citi on the go. You don't have to miss any of your favorite television and radio shows on Citi TV and Citi FM. Enjoy thrilling content from your world of great television and relevant radio at your convenience. Subscribe to CityTube on YouTube, turn on your notification button, and receive prompts on our live streaming sessions and new content uploads. For easy access to the CityTube page, from Citi TV and Citi FM.
The big issue, we are looking at the shortage of vaccines across the country. In fact, a number of regions have reported that they do not have vaccines. According to the Daily Graphic, the shortage is very widespread, and part of that report says that under the routine vaccination program, BCG, a vaccine for tuberculosis, oral polio vaccine, measles, rubella, meningitis, and diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, which is the same as whooping cough, are administered. And the vaccines against polio, hepatitis B, and Haemophilus influenza type B, and the 6 infectious diseases that are particularly dangerous to babies are also among those administered. But the graphic says its checks with health facilities in the capitals of Greater Accra, Western, Central, Upper West, Bono, Eastern, and Upper East regions confirmed the situation. And so it is quite a widespread situation. And I have Dr. Ejewa Bonodie, who is a member of the Pediatric Society of Ghana, and Franklin Kujo, who are helping us understand and address some of the issues. So Doc, you've been telling us about how widespread it is. You've been talking about, what they should keep checking every now and then, even though it comes to them at a cost. Is the society considering, in this period of shortage, aligning with any group or institution to put out this information more, so that parents, wherever they may be, will know that even though there's shortage, they should keep trying, they should keep doing ABC in order to keep their kids safe. Maybe they don't have to take their kids where there are a lot of people crowd. Is there a way? It may not be your job, but in the end, it comes back to you because you are in the facilities. And is there a way you guys are thinking around this, or is there a way you can do this to get to the people out there? All right.
So, like you have said, most of these mothers would bring their children to the vaccination centers to be vaccinated. So that's an easy way for us to reach them. However, beyond that, in our own little ways, on our own facility basis, some people have communication channels with their patients and encourage them to still push ahead and seek these vaccines for their children. The aim of Pediatric Society is, on one hand, to encourage parents not to give up on it, but also to push government and other organizations that are responsible for getting the vaccines in the country to make sure that we get the vaccines. The children who are voiceless are vaccinated. So it's a push on both ends.
I see. So what are the numbers currently? So we have a number of the diseases: tuberculosis, we have measles, we have whooping cough, and a few others. Which disease are we recording more and more in recent times?
All right, so we are relying on our surveillance to give us the figures, but we know that over the last few months in 2022, for instance, the latter part of 2022, the northern region had an outbreak of measles, and this was news. It was on a number of the radio stations. Some newspapers actually carried it. Like I said previously, in 2021, only 52 cases of measles were recorded in Ghana. But by the end of 2022, for instance, about 120 cases, confirmed cases, had been reported in the northern region alone. So that tells you that the situation is not very easy. I mean, it may be quite severe in some cases. In Greater Accra region, we do not have the number of confirmed cases as of 2022, but we know that there have been a few sporadic reports of measles. The other thing is that when we look at a condition like measles, the data that we have shows that many of the children who were said to have confirmed measles were either not vaccinated or do not know their vaccination status. In fact, we have only under 1% of the confirmed cases having had the 2 vaccines. So that points to the fact that the vaccines are doing a good job for us.
So can a parent suffer, or can a parent get measles from a child? Does it occur that way, or it only happens with children?
So if the adult is immunosuppressed, the adult may actually be able to get measles. It's passed through droplets, so anybody is...
I see. Franklin, maybe your final words on this. I mean, they are calling for government to ring-fence funding for vaccines like this. I don't know whether that is feasible or not in the current economic context we find ourselves in. What's your thinking?
Well, why not? If you look at the Auditor General's report of the COVID-19 funds, the way it was applied, we paid for some vaccines that have still not been delivered, right? And so we must learn lessons from that, really. And important vaccines like this must be ring-fenced. And I agree entirely with the with the doctor there that, look, these are critical healthcare when it comes to our spending. Maybe someone should be taking a bill to Parliament to get that done. Probably get one of the parliamentarians to sponsor a bill like that. It's very crucial.
I see. Interesting, Franklin. Well, thank you. So, what will be your final words to everybody, to parents, to the government, to practitioners, everybody who matters in this matter? What will be your final words to them in respect of the shortage of the vaccines?
My final words is that this has happened. This should never happen again. Our children are the vulnerable in society. Unfortunately, they do not have a voice of their own. When it came to haircuts, the pensioners could talk for themselves. But unfortunately, our children can't talk for themselves. So we want everybody to rally behind our children and speak for our children, such that this does not happen again in our nation.
I see. Thank you so much, Dr. Selorm Adonoo, member of the Pediatric Society of Ghana. Franklin Kujo, thanks so much as always for being on the program. My name is Selorm Adonoo. Thanks so much for your time and company. See you again next week. Have a good afternoon.